Welcome to The Being Guide, the lifestyle podcast that celebrates diversity of thought on all things health, wellness, and being. I'm your host, Charlotte Horn. Join me as I indulge my curiosity through candid conversations about health and life, with people who represent a whole spectrum of ideologies on what it means to be well. I'll be finding out what being means to each of them as they generously share their stories and leave us with insights that can be applied in the context of our everyday lives. Together, we seek to make sense of the paradoxes, raise awareness of the resources, and normalize conversations about the things that we are all thinking and feeling. It's not a one-size-fits-all, so take what you need and enjoy the show. My guest on the show today is Nick Miller. Nick is an artist and teacher living in Melbourne. In 2010, at the age of 19, Nick was diagnosed with aplastic anemia, a rare disorder in which the bone marrow fails to produce enough blood cells, causing a deficiency of all blood cell types. The condition left Nick unable to fight infection, resulting in an ongoing course of treatment, including a lower grade dose of chemotherapy and the ongoing administration of immunosuppressant drugs. After 4 years on this course of treatment, Nick's condition began to decline again, forcing him to make the call as to whether to take the risk of having a bone marrow transplant. In a recent address, Nick said, "It's a strange thing, having to choose and essentially gamble on your life." Nick made the call to proceed with the transplant, which thankfully was a success. He was out of hospital within 4 weeks of the operation, and less than 18 months later, Nick was back to doing what he loved: teaching visual arts. In 2019, Nick set out to create something to acknowledge his journey, curating an entire exhibition around his battle with aplastic anemia. He used thousands of old medication wrappers to create a work of art which has been displayed in galleries across Melbourne. Fast forward a few years, and Nick has continued to flourish, with few lasting physical effects from the condition, and even running a marathon in the last year. In this conversation, Nick and I chat about how his outlook on life evolved throughout his journey, how he remained optimistic in the face of adversity, and the importance of goal setting for healing. Nick Miller, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good, Charlotte. How are you?
I'm really well. It's good to see you. And see you in the flesh as well.
It's nice to be here.
Yeah, it's such a novelty. So for the benefit of the listeners, Nick and I are actually here in person. We've got a very makeshift setup going on. We're kind of perched around my kitchen table with a microphone that we're kind of just both sharing. So Joe Rogan it ain't, but that's okay. We do what we can. I reckon let's just jump straight into it, Nick.
Great. Fantastic.
If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and your sort of journey with health and well-being.
Yeah, so I'm 30 years old. I work as an art and design teacher at a school here in Melbourne. I'm also a practicing artist. I do have a background in architecture, which was what I studied before my teaching career. I'm here to talk about my long-term chronic illness, which is aplastic anemia, and a little bit about how I've sort of managed that in my life.
Great. Well, it's awesome to have you here, Nick. Let's just start with the basics, I guess. Can you tell us a little bit about aplastic anemia and I guess how you got it and how it then manifested for you?
Yeah, certainly. So aplastic anemia is an autoimmune disorder. So basically, it is my own body sort of identifying itself as foreign and initiating that immune response. So basically, my own body is identifying my bone marrow, which is where all cells originate. Undifferentiated cells all originate in the bone marrow. And my body sort of somehow at some stage when I was 20 years old detected this as foreign and gone into fighter mode and started to attack the bone marrow and the production of any undifferentiated cell.
I can only imagine that as a 20-year-old guy with, ambitions in the world at his feet, that must have been quite a scary thing to contend with. How did it kind of impact your life?
Yeah, look, so it was a real shock. So initially, I mean, how it first came about is I was just out on the eve of my 20th birthday celebration, and as you normally do, out and about, hitting a few bars and clubs in Melbourne, and sort of, I had been feeling under the weather that week, had some really sort of severe symptoms which were which were unusual. And, you know, it just wasn't getting better. And I sort of was fighting through that night thinking, yeah, no, we're all good. And, you know, just hit a point where I just went, you know what, I am rock bottom. I have got to go home. So, and it was quite unusual because at that stage of my life, I was fit, I was healthy, and really just sort of didn't have any general health issues. So it was really a different situation to be put in, because normally I'd just go, okay, I just need a rest. I just need to sort of take it easy and pull back and get some rest and nurture myself, and things will get better. But it sort of didn't.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, you know, that night when I was out celebrating, that was sort of, you know, where it all sort of took flight and got a little bit more serious.
Yeah, wow. And so what were the steps from there? So you had to go to the hospital and get diagnosed there?
Yeah, so initially I just actually went home that evening because I started to bleed from my throat and, you know, just was feeling not well at all. So I called it early that night, went back to my parents' house. I was still living at home at that stage. And just woke up the next day feeling absolutely rock bottom, just not good at all. And I sort of said to my mum, look, I'm not feeling great. I don't know what it is, but I'm just not getting better. Do you think you could get me into a doctor today? And she sort of called around a little bit. By this stage, when I woke up, I was just had so much coagulated blood coming from my throat, just did not feel good at all. And, you know, knew that something was wrong and something, you know, I couldn't manage it myself. So Mum called around to a few doctors. Most of the practices were closed on the Saturday, all fully booked, and I just couldn't get in. So we just said, hey, let's go down to the local hospital and you know, see what's up. So it was quite lucky. I mean, at this stage, I just had a fever, had chills, just absolutely zero energy, and was sitting in emergency, and my mum actually bumped into someone from my primary school community and who she knew, and she was working as a nurse there, and sort of looked over and said, oh, is that Nick? And Mum said, yeah. We're just getting him checked out. We don't know what's up, but he's been bleeding from his throat and he's just, you know, got no energy and stuff like this. And she said, I'm just going to call him straight through. He doesn't look right. And so went into emergency pretty much straight through after about 10 minutes, which is quite unusual here.
Yeah.
And they took a blood test and waited for the results for about half an hour to an hour, so sort of like a rapid one. And the doctor came in and said, yeah, something is seriously wrong. We don't know what it is at this stage. It's either a leukemia or a really severe glandular response to something, or something a bit rarer called aplastic anemia. But that would be the only thing that would justify why everything is just so low. So, you know, blood levels that were meant to be in the hundreds were, you know, single digits type things. So it was like oxygen mask on and straight in out of the emergency department. So I didn't pick anything up that might potentially knock me over. And they just said, we've got to send you to a oncology specialist hospital, which was Box Hill here in Melbourne.
Yeah, wow. And at that stage, obviously you were very sick, but did you have any indication of how bad it could get?
No, not really. So it was quite, you know, interesting being young, naive, 20 years old. You know, I was sitting in the back of the ambulance talking to the very blunt Ambo, who just sort of said, I sort of said, you know, do I need to call in sick for work tomorrow? And she just sort of laughed at me and said, don't worry about work tomorrow. And I said, okay, well, you know, I just need to give my boss a bit of an indication, like, you know, how long do you think I'll be out for? Just don't worry about work right now. It's not even a priority for you. But then just didn't really tell me anything more. So, I mean, it was kind of felt a little bit like being in limbo, because it was, you know, something that is likened to, you know, a severe glandular fever or leukemia, or aplastic anemia, which we just knew nothing about. It was completely foreign and unknown. And so it was quite an interesting wait, because it was about 3 days till we got the response, or I guess the definitive results from further testing to say actually it's aplastic anemia. So there was a bit of relief there, because I think the associations with leukemia and just knowing how severe blood cancers can be was a bit of a shock and super alarming. And so, a glandular response was obviously something that would be preferable, but then aplastic anemia we just knew nothing about. So when it came through was that it was like, great, it's not leukemia, but what the hell is this thing?
Yeah. And I think, that 3-day wait must have been agonizing. And I know I've had a couple of conversations with people that have had and still do have chronic illnesses, and some of them are still waiting for their diagnosis to this day. So although 3 days for you must have been an agonizing amount of time to wait, it's almost good that you got that conclusion and you kind of got that right. We know what it is. But then I guess, where did you go from there? What were the next steps, and what was the course of treatment that you had to go through?
Yeah, well, I think initially it was just very much like, okay, good, I know I'm not overreacting. I'm not a hypochondriac, which,
very validating.
As a young male, I think you just do that. You just go, no, I'm fine, I'll be good, and a lot of just people do that. But certainly I was super aware of just being like, no, I'm good, keep going. And then it was like, okay, yeah, I'm really sick. There's a reason why I'm feeling like this, and all I have to do is just rest and do what the doctors tell me, which in a way was kind of a relief, because it's like, all right, that's all I need to do right now. And I think it was harder to sort of see friends and family waiting, because for them, they feel so powerless. For me, it's like, okay, I can rest. I can, do everything I'm told to do, but for the others around you, there's nothing that they can do except for wait. And I think that was probably even harder on them. But the course of treatment at that stage, there was an option for a bone marrow transplant, which we didn't go down that route initially, because both my brother and my sister were tested to see if that'd be a match as a donor, and neither of them were. So there's a 25% chance that each sibling could be a donor from the same genetic material, but neither were. So the doctors actually advised at that time a different course of treatment, which was called ATGAM, which is a sort of low-grade chemotherapy. So I did a course of that. It's just basically, the idea is it just sort of resets your system, doesn't kill everything off, don't lose your hair, none of that, those sort of really severe symptoms that we tend to associate with chemotherapy drugs. But it was just essentially bringing the system back down, the immune system lower, compromising it a little bit so it's not in overdrive and it doesn't continue to attack the bone marrow. So just kind of telling it to chill and take a step back. And from there, I was on immunosuppressant drugs for quite a while. And that was essentially keeping the immune system at bay. So it wasn't in overdrive, but not taking it so low that I'd be susceptible to anything and everything. And, that a common cold would become fatal or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So you were on that course of treatment for how long?
Yeah, so for about 5 years. So actually it did initially work. It kept things at bay. But then after about 3 years, my blood level started to just slowly creep down. They would sort of go up and down a little bit. Each month I'd see the doctor, have a blood test, have a routine appointment, and we'd just discuss where everything was tracking. And then after about the third year, things were just pretty steadily tracking down for about 14, 15 months. So that's when we started to discuss a bone marrow transplant again, or another course of ATGAM. So the two treatment options, ATGAM, we could do that again. However, the likelihood of it being successful was pretty similar, but probably less. So we know your body is going to respond to it, or it has responded to it this way. It's never been a curative option. So when I was presented with that initially, it was never a cure. It was just this will keep things at bay. It will be supplemented with immunosuppressant drugs, and that will be the course of treatment ongoing. Whereas the transplant was obviously a lot higher risk. However, it was the only curative option for aplastic anemia. So it was the only thing that you could try and actually know that maybe you'll get over this thing and not always be on an immunosuppressant drug, which was quite appealing in a way, but then also being told that the success rate and, the survival rate comes to play. I think the survival rate is 4 in 5. Which is not too bad, 80%, but then also 1 in 5 people dying, also not great.
Yeah, it's taking your life into your own hands. And I can't even imagine what that must be like to have to take that gamble.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, do you go the safe route, which also is something that then will lead to further complications down the track. Being on an immunosuppressant drug for all your life will cause significant strain on your liver. So that's something that they're constantly looking at. Also causes photosensitivity. So you're really susceptible to melanomas and skin cancers. And is also just kind of, it's stripping your body of certain things. So, it's not ideal to be on that long term. I was on that drug for 6 years all up. And, there's some effects that, I still see in my body. And obviously that's something that I've reflected on quite a bit in my art practice. But yeah, so that wasn't something that I really loved the sound of. Yeah. And at the same time, aplastic anemia is not very common in someone of my age at that time. It tended to affect people who are, middle-aged or older, towards 50 onwards, or quite young, like children. So, treatment options of a bone marrow transplant, something that's, I guess, a really big thing for you to go through in terms of your body and its resilience. Feeling like doing that in my mid-20s felt a lot more comfortable than maybe doing outgam, maybe being in the same place in 5 years' time or 10 years' time or 20 years' time, but my body being a lot more worn down because of the drugs that I'd been on and all of that. I thought that given my other general health and my, keeping fit and all of that sort of stuff was putting me in a really good place to do it whilst I was young. And if there was going to be a time to do it, it would probably be then. Yeah.
Did it take quite a lot for you to make that decision, or was it the sort of thing where you were like, no, this feels like the thing that I need to do? Or was there like a fair amount of deliberation?
Yeah, I think we certainly discussed it. I discussed it with my family. I think with these sorts of decisions, I'm the sort of person that just asks the doctor and really, appreciates their insight, their professionalism, their understanding of all of the patients that they see. And I just said to my doctor at the time, what would you do? I said, I know it's not, you need to take the personal side of things out. And I know that, I'm not being pressured by you or anything like that. But what decision would you make if you're in my situation? And he said, I would have the transplant. It's the only curative option. And, I think you're just delaying the inevitable. Mm-hmm. If I'm being totally honest, or that's what I would feel like I was doing if I was in your situation. However, it's your decision and you need to be the one who makes it. So it was really good advice. And I just think I'm the sort of person that just really trusts the people who are in those professional roles. They have a lot more information that I'm not privy to. And, that was the best course of support, and I guess that was the ultimate deciding factor. I just said I want to be doing the thing that the doctor thinks is right. Yeah. Actually, at the end of the day,
totally, and I can completely understand that, and that's a very sensible and pragmatic way of looking at things. Was there anything inside you, any kind of intuition or any hope that was kind of contributing to your decision making, or was it all, let's kind of outsource that decision to the person that probably knows best?
No, look, I was certainly invested in the decision. It wasn't, I certainly did deliberate, and I certainly thought about all of the other options. I'm very big into sort of, the whole person, and also, trying other options. At that time I was seeing a naturopath. I mean, obviously, we'll probably get to it, but I take care of my health and was, super open to anything, in discussions, I didn't take the decision lightly, but I did really value that opinion from the doctor as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just think, that doctor had access to a lot more information. I think that was really formative in my decision making.
Now, so
and each their own, that's just my course. And
Definitely.
I totally appreciate when people have anxieties around that or want to make a decision otherwise, or would go for something that is maybe a safer and less risky option. I think everyone needs to sit with the decision themselves.
It's this subjective thing, and everyone's health is a matter for them to determine the best course of action. And, these conversations are just around, highlighting certain paths that people have taken and how it's not one size fits all. Different people need to do different things in order to aid their recovery. And I think, this is it's really great speaking to you and actually kind of getting that insight and hearing that the journey that you've gone through.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it will help a lot of people. There was something that you said in your talk at the Maddie Symposium, and it was around the time that you spent in hospital prior to the transplant. So you'd made that decision, very difficult thing to do. And then you've got the waiting game prior to the transplant. And you mentioned that you just weren't used to having that much time and space, especially ahead of something that was going to be such a monumental thing in your life. How did you navigate that time and space? Because I feel like it's something that as human beings in general, regardless of whether or not you're about to go for a life-threatening operation or not, we really struggle to just sit and be. Mm. How did you, in that circumstance where you're facing something pretty scary, how did you navigate that space?
Well, I'm the sort of person that's usually pushed for time anyway. Like, I've got more ideas, I've got more things to do than time that I have. So in one way, it wasn't difficult because I always have things that I want to be doing and would love the time to do. And I understand the question, and I appreciate that's the perspective that you're presenting in terms of, you've got something quite significant just on the border there about to happen. Yet you've got all this time to just be with yourself and be with the people around you. I guess my perspective at the time was, I wouldn't sort of speak about this so honestly, but if this is going to be the last of my life, if I do run into complications and if things don't go well, I want to have spent it not just working till the end and not prioritizing some of these other things that I find really important in my life. And just slowing down allowed me to make sure I had some nice times with friends and, got up north to visit my family in Queensland and spent some time just, getting some sunshine and getting really fit. I mean, that to me was a real priority, not I'm going through something really difficult and I'm just going to kind of chill up until that point. I wanted to give myself all of the strength. I knew I was going to lose it, but just go into that treatment feeling really good, feeling really well, and fit, and know that I'm giving myself the best chance at recovery. But also know that I had some time with some friends, got to party a bit before I did go into hospital and stuff as well. It's important.
Always time for a party.
Exactly. I say to my students,
blood
don't
transplant
forget to party.
Not.
Yeah, exactly. It's important. So, but just spend that time seeing people and doing the things that you like to do, and probably didn't put too much pressure on myself. But I had about 9 weeks off before the transplant. I had actually got a bout of pneumonia that winter, and I was due to have the transplant in September. And my work at the time, they were super supportive, really great. And they just sort of said to me, look, we've got your replacement teacher already. She's going to be coming in 2 days a week, working with you and just doing like a slow handover. And that way, if you feel like you want to stop at any time, just say stop, just go. Like, that's fine. she's ready to go at any moment to step in full time. So you just do what's comfortable, which was really great because I sort of went back to my doctor and said, I have this opportunity. I know I've just been sick with pneumonia and I want to make sure I'm good prior to the transplant. What do you recommend? And the doctor sort of said, look, if you've got the option, if you're happy to, I would just stop now. Like, what's the point, really? You work at a school, you work with, young adults, and they're not a great populace for being the most hygienic, and we're in winter and
a breeding ground essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So he said, if you can avoid it, that's actually the best thing. If you're happy to do that, if your work's happy to support that, I think just take some time for yourself. And it was great. I think it was a really important part of going in there with a good mindset, going in there feeling really good, and knowing that also I'd had a lot of good times and experiences with people. Like it wasn't over the top in terms of, I wasn't overemphasizing it. I wasn't sort of like, I need to catch up with everyone, I need to do a very special thing. It was just being in my normal course without all of my normal course of life, but without all of the pressures of work and time constraints that normally we're faced with.
Yeah. And do you feel that some of those lessons have stayed with you? So the kind of slowing down, really looking at what's important in life. Do you think it's kind of really helped you to bring some of that forward? You're smiling at me. So I'm assuming your life has just gone back to the normal fast pace that you've always played at.
I think the slowing down I haven't learned, I must admit.
We're bad at that, especially our generation. We are not great at the slowing down.
I think my answer to your question is yes and no. So I don't think I've learned the slowing down thing, but I think I've certainly learned to prioritize and really identify the things that do bring me joy and the things that are really important. And I make time for those, even if it's time on top of, and it's contributing to busyness. I know that it's things that will contribute to a life well lived. And for me, that's important. And I think prior to any diagnosis, I think I had a reasonably good understanding of that. But I think the whole experience has certainly heightened that. And, you can't help but be cognizant of the fact that any time can be the end, and that's the case for everyone actually, and just do all the things that bring you joy, pursue the things that you want to pursue, be involved, don't be too self-conscious in the way that will actually withhold you from things that bring you joy. And have a good balance. Can't also be all fun. You've got to still have career goals or whatever it is that is your goal. You still need to be pragmatic about things. You still need to earn an income. You can't just go doing whatever you want for the rest of your life, but at the same time prioritizing the important things. I think is really shone through.
So it's been about 6 years now since the transplant, and about 5 years since starting back at work. Do you feel like your relationship with yourself has changed at all? Do you feel like you had a good sense of self, I guess, prior to your diagnosis, or do you feel like this is kind of really carved out who you are as a human being?
I think it's a good question. I think I am quite acutely aware of our own mortality and the limitations of your body, which as a young person you can often forget. Certainly as a teenager prior to my diagnosis, I know it's said often, but you feel invincible. You don't actually think that these things will happen to you. And I think knowing your limits is certainly something that I'm very aware of these days, and have taken from this journey, and I'm very conscious of. Like, I definitely don't take good health for granted. Even the trainer at the gym that I go to sort of said last week, it's such a joy to be able to move your body like this. Don't rock up to this workout feeling like I have to be here. I feel like you want to be here, and it's platitude used by a gym trainer. I get it. But at the same time, like, when you've been in that situation where you can't use your body like that, it's certainly something that actually rings true, you know, and you do really appreciate the things that you can do. I mean, like, I couldn't, you know, like, walk up around the block at one stage without being puffed. So, you know, what post-transplant, that was like going back to absolute no fitness and building up from there. So,
and build up you did. So I understand that you ran a marathon last year, was it?
Yes.
Last year. This is just ridiculous. This is like going from not being able to walk around the block to running 42 Ks?
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty significant. How important do you feel that was for you to do?
Yeah, it's always been something at the back of my mind that I've thought, wow, that is actually an amazing goal. Like, I'd love to do that one day. And it was the lockdowns that sort of allowed me to do it. I mean, I've always enjoyed running and, you know, set myself goals with running here and there. But last year with the lockdowns, I mean, it was a little bit deja vu because, I mean, I was in a hospital in a airlock ward for, you know, a month and plus another couple of weeks when I went back in there. So, you know, in a way it was good training for the COVID lockdowns. But, you know, when that time came last year and we had our really long lockdown, I just said, I'm just going to do something with this time because it's an opportunity. And, you know, the last time that I was locked down like this, I couldn't do anything. So, and I couldn't even concentrate there in hospital because you just don't have the capacity when you're on chemo to concentrate long term and stuff like that. So even reading and stuff like that was not really something that was viable. I kind of just bided the time. So I don't know, just sort of set myself this goal and started running longer and longer distances and thought, well, now's as good a time as ever to set that goal and try and reach it. And that's
awesome. Yeah. Which one did you do?
So I actually didn't sign up to a particular marathon. I just
did 42 Ks on your own.
Literally just built a good playlist and ran in one direction for about 15K from my house along the Yarra River and then the Gardeners Creek Trail. Then run back. Why do I keep saying road?
Well, there's a nice bike path as well.
Yes,
you know, it's easy to conflate the two.
Ran back, met my partner back at around my house, refueled, had some more water, recoated with sunscreen, and then ran the last part of it. I just set up a course myself, put on some tunes. That
must have been a hell of a playlist.
The worst part was when my AirPods died about 8 Ks from the end.
Yeah.
And then
then you just have to sit with your thoughts. Damn it.
Oh my God, that was the hardest thing. I thought, why didn't I foresee this? Because it was a killer.
It happens. Not that I've ever run a marathon. A half or just over a half is my limit at this point. But you should be really proud of yourself. That's quite an achievement.
Yeah. That's a good goal.
Do you so you think that kind of goal setting that formed, I guess, a part of your recovery?
Yeah, look, I think so. I think I'm probably someone who does set goals just anyway in life. And I think for me, it's a way of getting things done that I want to get done. Sometimes it's easy to say I want to do things. And unless you just make that a tangible goal, for me, it can just take a backward seat and can just be sort of a rolling goal that never actually eventuates. But I think certainly in my recovery, I mean, in a way, I sort of resign myself to the fact that what will be, will be. I'm going to just do everything that I can. But things like goals for exercise, I think, is really important. And certainly I had those as part of the recovery process. I was offered as a sort of clinical trial when I was recovering. They were doing a research into the effect of exercise on recovery, and was offered to be a part of a physiotherapy/exercise program as part of the recovery process. And, you know, I just jumped at that because I thought, even if it just ties me a little bit longer to the hospital, but it's giving me a purpose to do a set program, once or twice a week. Great. It's just another thing that keeps me accountable. And they certainly weren't sort of getting us to push ourselves beyond any sort of limits. But, it was a good sort of thing in the background to go, there's another focus that isn't just, something that is actually out of your own hands, which is your recovery.
100%.
But the exercise and the supportive stuff around your recovery is in your own hands, and it was a good, thing to highlight.
Yeah, and just setting yourself up for your best chances of recovery and success through nurturing your body in that way.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, speaking of goals, it's not just exercise goals that you seem to be crushing. So I was lucky enough to come and see your exhibition the other day. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I actually, since moving into my career in teaching, have picked up an art making practice. So as I mentioned at the start, my background's in architecture, and then I moved into teaching. So I was certainly more of a design background, but being in that realm, I was also teaching visual arts. And for me, it was very important to make art if I'm going to be teaching art. That was just an important part of my teaching practice, to be engaged in the realm that I'm trying to inspire kids in. So I sort of picked up an art practice ever since I started teaching, which was in 2014. And I sort of work as a mixed media artist. I work in different mediums at different times because I tend to follow more of a conceptual framework and work to a concept rather than a particular medium. However, the artwork that I worked on a lot of art in my recovery, actually, in that year that I had off work, and put together an exhibition at the end of that time, which comprised of some oil paintings, some photography, and some drawings. And it was a great, again, goal to work towards, and know that I had just something, intellectually and with my skills working towards, and also to have at the end of that time something to show for my year off that wasn't just, I've been knocked out and I haven't achieved anything. Not that I felt like I had to achieve something, but just to give myself a goal that was a positive goal. And that was my first solo exhibition. But it was only, talking about the most recent exhibition, it was only after I sort of have been in the all clear with my health that I started to make work that was very reflective of my battle with chronic illness. So, and it is ongoing in many ways, but I guess, I'm on no long-term drugs for aplastic anemia. And since that happened, I sort of reflected a lot more on what it was to go through this process, what it means to be, managing a chronic illness alongside a life, and started reflecting on that and making artworks about that a lot more specifically. So my most recent show is a series of 2D drawings, so colourful, bright, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, faces made out of pills, bright, Sharpie, mixed emotions, and the title of the exhibition is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or at least the acronym thereof. So it's reflective of the pill boxes that I used to have to open every day and, take a handful of pills. I think I was on about 36 a day at one stage. And, just the fact that you can feel up and you can feel down, but it's almost kind of just part of the process. It's this ritual that you have when you're living with a chronic illness. I mean, you're doing this exercise, you're moving through this motion every single day. And I started to just make some tongue-in-cheek, funny faces as I was, each day, just as a little kind of purpose to the task.
Yeah.
And then just started photographing them, and all the while was collecting the blister packet pill casings for my immunosuppressant, which I started doing shortly after I started taking them, just after diagnosis.
Yeah, wow, that's some serious hoarding.
Yeah. much to my parents' dismay at the time when I was living at home. But I just thought, I don't know, there's always been something in me, ever since I was a kid, about seeing something that can very easily be not disposable, seeing those things as disposable. I don't know what it is, like even plastics that had quite a structure to them. I was sort of like curious as to, this is such a long-standing item. Why do we just like use it in a disposable way?
Well, it's great from a sustainability perspective. So, you're doing the planet an absolute solid by hoarding all of these wrappers.
Right. So I just thought, I don't know, I just thought the sheer quantity, the sheer utilitarianism of consumption of these pills, which I'd never had to do in my life ever, just take so many pills, that, I just thought it was kind of mind-blowing, and this whole other world that I'd never seen is, the sheer quantity of this medication that was required to keep one person alive. And I just thought it's a really interesting point to reflect on, and to represent for people going through chronic illness. I would have never thought that would rule your life so stringently in terms of a timeline, in terms of a ritual, in terms of getting to the chemist. Like you can't run out of a script. You've got to make sure you've always got a script. And I think just that mass of these pill blister packets was representative of that. So I hoarded them for 6 years, as you said, and then have created 2 different iterations of an installation piece. So a 3-dimensional spatial artwork that you can walk into, and you can walk through and see. And in the first iteration here, the noises associated with this ritual of taking pills every single day of your life. Yeah.
When you were doing, I'm going to stop calling it hoarding.
Yeah.
When you were collecting the wrappers, and I mean, there were thousands, right?
Yeah.
Did you have any idea what you were going to do with them at that stage, or was that just something that kind of evolved as the time went on?
Yeah, I think it was something I had no idea. I just thought, you know what, we'll probably get to reflecting on this and making art about this at some stage, and yeah, I'm gonna keep these. I certainly wanted it to be the whole journey of those, so I didn't know where it was going to go. I didn't know how many I would have. When I did have that quantity, in the end, a finite quantity of just under 4,000 of the casings, that had to define how the artwork was made, because you only had so many. It wasn't like you could just buy more at the shops. It wasn't like I had a valid script anymore and could just go get more to make the artwork look good. So, and it was more of a design perspective when thinking about the construction of this artwork. So I 3D modeled various different versions using the exact amount of casings that I would have. So then I could think about the formations that I could produce and what would work best conceptually for the artwork that would represent, the different, I guess, connections with the medical industry that I was encountering. So the first iteration was very specifically containing 2 motifs, so the plus motif and the minus motif. So earlier I was talking about my monthly appointments with my doctor and how I would sit down there that the same time each month and sort of discuss whether my blood levels had gone up or they had gone down. And it was something that was very disassociative or disassociated with the rest of my life, in that I tried to just continue and live my life as per usual. And then when I saw the doctors and I got my blood tests and stuff, that was just something that happened on the side. Tried not to merge them too much. I tried not to be defined by them too much. I certainly didn't talk about it a lot. It was something that was happening over here, and I was still me doing me over in the other corner. So, the plus and the minus was something that constantly I came back to. It was something that I was trying to not let define my life, but also was very really defining my life. Yes, they've gone up, or no, they've gone down, and that's actually what will determine the course of the next month of your life.
Yeah, that's such a difficult thing to reconcile, isn't it? I can only imagine that on the one hand, you don't want to be defined by this thing that you're going through, but on the other hand, it's such a significant part of your existence at the moment. And I think what you've done by, having this goal and setting this intention and really channeling this experience into something like really positive and really beautiful, it just really deserves to be commended, because what you've done is exceptional. And is the exhibition still going at the moment, or is it over?
No, it's over. Yeah,
Okay.
So it's finished up. It ran for the month of November. Yeah.
Is there anywhere that people can sort of go and see images or any of the other work that you've done?
Yeah, certainly. So I've got images of the artworks on my Instagram, so nmillerart. And yeah, so I've got images of my 2D works and also images of the installation. The first iteration of the installation is on there now, and then I'll be sort of feeding out some newer versions of this second iteration that I just exhibited recently. So slightly different. The first one has the plus minus motifs and mirrors to sort of create that sense of endlessness, to be in this thing, but kind of see no end to it at the same time. And then the newer version is something where it's more immersive. You can walk inside it a little bit more comfortably, but also feel contained by it. Also in the latest iteration, it had sort of 3D, laser cut replica pills, just so you could see the quantity of what was taken and the different sizes, because they're quite a substantial little pill. The big one, they're decent size, so all of those were to scale and etched in with their dosages as well. But yeah, I'll be feeding through more updated images from the latest exhibition as well.
Awesome. Yeah, because it's definitely worth going to see if it's showing again in the future. But in the meantime, you just have to cop the Instagram, which is as fantastic. I'm just going to pivot the conversation slightly to your work with Maddie's Vision. So you did a talk at the Maddie's Vision Symposium this year or last year?
Yeah, just at the start of this year. So I was honoured to be asked to be a guest presenter at the online symposium, which was essentially a really awesome 3-day resource for people either in the medical industry or people being faced with bone marrow disorders, bone marrow failure of any sort, and just a really great source of information. So I was obviously talking from the perspective of someone who'd been through it, but there was also leading researchers and any sort of cutting edge technologies that are happening in that area were all presenting at that. So it was a great opportunity to just speak about what to expect, that there is another side, and another side that is really positive, and another side that that people can get through this and live a really good and healthy life, and otherwise normal life, and that I think that perspective is important to be heard as well. Yeah,
completely agree. And I think what's amazing is that it's kind of, you've mentioned before that you're a fairly private person and that you don't necessarily want your identity to kind of hinge on what you've been going through, but it's amazing now that you're able to kind of share your experience and be really open and candid about that.
Yeah, and I think I probably had more insecurities and vulnerabilities when I was going through that, when I was more acutely sort of still, I guess, not in the clear, which is quite strange. I mean, I think some people really do go down the route of being really open and public with their experiences, and then other people very private. For me, I was quite private about it at the time. I mean, I wasn't hiding anything. I certainly wasn't not talking about it if someone asked me, but I didn't like it to be the focus of the conversation. I was probably a little bit insecure about that, and I think being on the other side of that now is really great to talk about it, and I probably should have, I think I was open to talking about it at the time, but with people who it's appropriate to talk about it with, people who are close to you and people who you would normally talk that intimately with, not people who your general conversation wouldn't involve kind of things that are close to you. And I think that was the uncomfortability for me, where it was someone who's like, I really respect and value the fact that you're asking me about my health, but I would usually just be like, thanks so much for asking. Yeah, going well, going fine, even if it wasn't, it was just kind of like, that's really nice that they're showing me that they're thinking about me, but also I don't want to be that person that's the sick person.
Yeah. And
I'm someone else other than that.
Absolutely. And sometimes it does take the space after, it's traumatic going through like what you went through. And sometimes you do kind of need the space after that to process all of that and sit with it and then be like, okay, I feel in a spot where I feel more comfortable talking about it because I've kind of grappled with it and I've got my head around it a little bit more.
Yeah, totally. And I guess like that imminent idea that something's just going to turn at any stage is sort of, it's backed off a little bit and you feel a bit more confident about, the
you're
fact
out of the
you've
woods.
got a bit more, you've got a bit more time like this.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So just to sort of round out the conversation, you've already kind of left us with so many amazing insights into your journey, which I think is just going to really, really help other people that, might be going through something similar or, who are friends or, have people in their lives that are going through something similar. But what kind of parting tip or advice could you leave listeners with who might be going through something similar, or the people around them in their lives who are looking to support them?
I think and I probably always, again, tried to nurture this in my mindset, but being positive about a situation that you're in, even if it's shitty, I think is really important. And just going, I've got control over a lot of things in my life, even if you don't have control over that, which is obviously a huge part. Your health is a huge part, but you do have control over a lot of other things. And I think my advice would be, really focus on that. Focus on the things that you can do rather than the things that, you're limited in doing at that time. For me, that really worked. It contributed to a positive mindset. I'm sure it contributed to me doing really well in my recovery and going into the transplant feeling really good. And I just think, it's actually a really valuable lesson on perspective in life anyway, regardless of whether you've got health issues or not. It's just a great way of dealing with adversity. And building resilience to go, all right, well, what is something positive that's happening? What is something that I can control? Let's focus on that. And that's all I can do. That's all I'm in control of. And in a way, it's nice because you can leave the rest and you can go, I'm doing everything that I can. And, you sort of have a little bit more lightness in that respect, knowing that, that's all you can do. Yeah.
No, that's a great, very tangible tip to leave listeners with. So thank you very much for that. We're just entering the last little part of the show where I ask all of my guests the same set of questions, and you just have to answer with the first thing that comes to mind. Just try and be snappy, but if you're not, that's all right too. We seem to bend the rules a little bit when we get to the... Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Great. What's the best advice you've been given?
Always remember to party.
Great advice. And the worst advice?
Fake it till you make it. I'm not good at faking it. Just try and actually do it. Just try and actually do it and be authentic about it. And faking it doesn't work for me.
Okay. What's the biggest lesson you've learned?
That somebody's always going through a battle that you don't know. I love that old adage, which is, there's always somebody silently battling something that you have no idea about. And I'm sure it's put a lot more succinctly if you look it up on the internet. But
that wasn't bad.
Yeah, I think that just is so important, like we can get really, we're living in this world and society with other people, and we can get really, we can have really awkward encounters at times. And I think it's just so nice to try and look at the positives in people and get something out of that and try and figure out what you have in common with someone, and it certainly leads to more interesting experiences in your life. So yeah,
agree.
For me at least.
No, totally, 100%. I think, to your point, everyone is going through a battle that you don't necessarily know about, and sometimes connecting through these conversations is the kind of way to form a deepest connection, because nobody bonds over perfection. Nobody bonds over the schmick, shiny things that, are nice to look at, but we bond over suffering more than we do. Yeah.
Totally.
Right, anyway, we digress. Sorry, this isn't a very quick fire round, is it? That's my bad. Okay, next question. Who or what inspires you the most?
Strangely enough, the anxiety of missing out on the important things in life inspires me a lot, because that anxiety.
I think there's a term for that. It's called FOMO.
Yeah, pretty much. I think my greatest regret would be missing out on all the things that I think would be really amazing to do in the world, and I think a healthy level of anxiety towards that missing out is a good inspiration, is a good motivation to going out and doing things that you want to do. And also, my mum inspires me a lot. Just actually an incredible
That's
person.
Beautiful. Yeah. That's really beautiful. Okay. What does your daily well-being routine look like?
Try to do something every morning in terms of health and wellness, or most mornings. So I mix it up. For me, I mix it up between either a run or going to the gym or doing like a boxing class or yoga. And my personal, I guess, way of maintaining that is just choosing what I feel like doing the day before or the day of, and not putting too much pressure in going, I'm going to do the gym 3 times this week and yoga 2 times this week, and just going, you know what, if I do something each day, that's awesome. And I'll choose whatever I feel like doing in the day. And then I've always got a healthy relationship with well-being, or with exercise at least. I definitely try and eat well where I can. I always wake up, do my workout, have a smoothie. But I also don't think I'm like crazy rigid in that, I've got a bit of flexibility, and I think that's really important for well-being, because it comes into your mental well-being too, going,
definitely,
where's the balance? You got to maintain balance.
Do you think, and this is me just going off track here, but that's okay, it's my own show, I can do what the hell I want. Do you think that the going through what you went through and having the illness has made you kind of be able to listen to your body better? So where you were just saying, some days I, feel like doing yoga, some days I want to go for a run. Do you think that going through what you did has really kind of made you understand and listen and be in tune with your body?
100%. Yeah. Prior to diagnosis, I would have just powered through, and I hadn't seen a GP for about 6 or so years because I hadn't been seriously sick. I just, got a cold and did what you need to do, or powered on. That's certainly not my approach. And even if someone talks to me and says, I've just got this weird niggle or something's unusual, I just say, go and sort it out. Go and see a doctor. Go and see, your myotherapist, your massage therapist, whoever it is. Go and actually treat it. Listen to your body. Stop. Slow down. Easier said than done. But actually, definitely. I'm definitely of that mindset. I don't keep pushing through if I'm not feeling well. I just listen to my body, and I think it's so important. And I definitely have a better relationship with my body and myself, and my well-being just from doing that.
That's great. Final question: what does being mean to you?
I think being means to me living a fulfilled life. So not just kind of going through the motions, not just focusing on, health or meditation, or being really kind of rigid in this is what will lead to this. It's actually just going, what are the things I want to get out of life? Am I sitting with this and living with this? And am I doing the things that I want to in this world? Because to me, that's what being is about. That's what being a human being is about, and that's what being here on this earth is about. So, yeah.
Beautiful. What a lovely way to end the show. Nick Miller, it has been a pleasure having you here in person, perched around my dining room table.
It's nice. It's cozy. Thank you very much.
I'm so grateful to you for coming here and for speaking so candidly about your experience. I think, sharing these stories really does go quite far in touching other people and helping and supporting and making people feel less alone in the journeys that they're going through. So yeah, again, a huge thank you from me. Really appreciate you.
No worries. Thanks for having me on.
Anytime.
Yeah,
Great to see you again, Nick.
Likewise. See you, Charlotte.
See ya.